Hello, this is Rachel again. I'm going to be winging this video a wee bit because it's just too much material and I can't be bothered getting it all organised. But anyway, I'll try to be coherent. In my last video, I brought out this little favourite book. And I said that it was this book, the study of this book, that convinced me without a doubt that the Bible was in fact God's Word. And the chapter on prophecies was the one especially that convinced me. Anyway, last time I looked at the prophecy about Tyre and how it really wasn't fulfilled according to what was prophesied in the scriptures, and I view that pretty much as a prophetic failure. But in that chapter on prophecy, in that book, it also goes on to talk about Babylon, Babylon's turn. Now, I struggled a lot in my last few years as a witness with the prophecies about Babylon the Great falling and how this paralleled the fall of ancient Babylon. And I became particularly interested in it when this brochure came out, Keep on the Watch. And according to the date inside, it was 2004. But there was a paragraph in here that really got my attention, and it was, let's have a look. It was under this, the hour of judgment has arrived. And it went on to say that I was talking about when the 10 horns, the seven-headed beast, political elements of this world system would turn on the harlot, and it says it will be sudden, surprising, shocking, not foreseeable or gradual. So I thought, okay, well, I better, find out as much as I can about it so I wouldn't be taken, well, not that I expected to be destroyed because I wasn't part of Babylon the Great, in my opinion, back then. But I wanted to be prepared. Here's where it says that. I sort of asterisked it. Where is it? Yeah. Anyway, so I spent quite a lot of time making charts, combing through all the literature, looking for everything I could find, and here's an example of some of the charts I'd make up. I made up this one about ancient Babylon, and I was trying to parallel it with Jerusalem's destruction, and then with Babylon the Great in Book of Revelation. And because the literature clearly sort of parallels them, yet they weren't fitting together for me. And so I made all these charts and notes on stuff. I had to go and dig this out of my heap of stuff from a few years back. I haven't really bothered looking at it properly because it's a bit pointless really. But anyway, I put a lot of effort in. And one of the things that really bugged me was this business about Babylon the Great falling. And if you look at the prophecies about this ancient city of Babylon falling, and it talks about the waters being dried up. And of course when the Medo-Persians did come to take the city, that's how they gained entrance, by diverting the waters from the Euphrates River so that the water level lowered and they could just walk in, and apparently the gate was open so the armies were able just to gain access easily. So a parallel has always been made by the Watchtower of the waters drying up to people drying up, like the support, human support for the false religions would dry up before her fall. But we know that the Jehovah's Witnesses teach that Babylon the Great fell in, well, I suppose that they did used to say 1918, That's probably 1919 now. At the time that they say that the faithful and discreet slave were appointed to feed the domestics, according to their new teaching. That's probably the time they say that Babylon the Great fell. But there's kind of problems with that. If we I've got this book out now. Okay. There's so much to say. I'll just talk about the waters bit first. Hang on, where is that? Chapter 16. Yeah. Okay. So on page 229 of this book, the Revelation Grand Climax book, it's got a whole thing here about talking about the waters drying up. And it starts out saying, even now support for Babylonish religion is drying up in many places, indicating what will happen when the kings from the rising of the sun make their attack. And yeah, here it says, it talks in paragraph 21 about the ancient city of Babylon, and it says, in the hour of crisis, the river Euphrates failed in the defence of that great city. Something similar is due to happen to modern Babylon, the worldwide system of false religion. But they say that Babylon the Great has already fallen, so they've got the waters drying up after her fall, because they say that she already fell. I'll just go back to a previous chapter. This is page 209. What chapter is this one? Babylon the Great has fallen. Has fallen. It says here in paragraph 11, as we previously noted, the proud city of Babylon experienced a disastrous fall from power in 539 BCE. Then the cry was heard, she has fallen, Babylon has fallen. The great seat of the world empire had fallen to the armies of Medo-Persia under Cyrus the Great. Although the city itself survived the conquest, her fall from power was real, and it resulted in the release of her Jewish captives. They returned to Jerusalem to establish pure worship there. Paragraph 12 says, in our century, the cry that Babylon the Great has fallen has also been heard. Babylonish Christendom's temporary success in 1918 was sharply reversed in 1919 when the remnant of anointed ones, the John class, was restored by a spiritual resurrection. What that's talking about is, if you remember, during World War One, some of the prominent figures amongst the international Bible students, including the president, were imprisoned, and largely we're told, that witnesses are told, that it was at the instigation of the clergy. So they apparently this Babylonish Christendom's temporary success was reversed in 1919 when these witnesses were released from prison. Okay, I hope that made sense. Okay, carrying on. Babylon the Great had fallen as far as having any captive hold on God's people was concerned. Like locusts, Christ's anointed brothers swarmed out of the abyss ready for action. They were the modern faithful and discreet slave, and the master appointed them over all his belongings. Of course, that teaching changed in 2012. They are not appointed over all the belongings until the future. Basically, Great Tribulation, Armageddon. And that in 1919 they were only appointed to feed the domestics, and that means that there was no appointment in 33 CE like they used to teach. Okay, carrying on, so it's said that they were appointed over all the belongings. Their being used in this way proved that Jehovah had utterly rejected Christendom, despite her claim to be his representative on earth. Pure worship was re-established, and the way was open to complete the work of sealing the remnant of the 144,000, the remaining ones of the seed of the woman, the age-old enemy of Babylon the Great. All of this signalled a crushing defeat for that satanic religious organisation. Okay, really? So these brothers got released from prison and carried on with their work, and that is proof. That's proof that Jehovah has rejected, utterly rejected, all of Christendom. So all other Christians not associated with the Bible students at that time, and later on Jehovah's Witnesses. So that's not particularly good proof, is it? Anyway, getting back to Babylon. So yeah, I had a lot of difficulty trying to see the parallels between what happened to the city, ancient city of Babylon, and the interpretation that the witnesses have about, you know, the destruction of Babylon the Great. Like I said, they taught already that Babylon, the Great, Christendom, had fallen back in 1919, yet her waters hadn't dried up yet. And we can see that religion still thrives around the world, doesn't it? False religion still thrives. So it certainly hasn't lost power, has it? And even a lot of the political figures, major political figures around the world, are highly religious people. And we see the United Nations actually protects religious diversity, and even Jehovah's Witnesses turn to the United Nations and agencies that are related to the United Nations to ensure that they have freedom of religious belief and have the right to share their beliefs with people. So they're a protector. You know, religion is protected in the world at the moment, so it certainly hasn't lost any power. Anyway, getting back to ancient Babylon. Now, we discussed this a lot when I was at the Kingdom Hall, and we studied the Isaiah books and the Jeremiah book that were published by the Watchtower Society, and went through in quite a bit of detail. And when you read what's written in those books, you would get the impression that when Babylon was conquered by the Medo-Persians, that it was some kind of sudden destruction or something. But in fact, it was nothing like that at all. If I had to describe it from what I know, and I'm not a Bible scholar and I haven't done a lot of research into this or anything, but just from what I gather from reading and seeing documentaries on TV, is that it was more like a hostile takeover. And there's even some question as to whether Belshazzar was actually killed or not. He was the king at the time, or who was in Babylon at the time. So I remember seeing a documentary on TV about Babylon, and it said that the people in the city actually welcomed the Medo-Persians because they were kind of a bit sick of the way I guess Belshazzar, and I don't know if it's Nabonidus or Nabonidus, had sort of been neglecting some of the temples and letting the city get a bit, run down in some aspects, and they were looking forward to having someone new come in. So that was a bit of a different perspective, and what actually happened, and I've got some stuff to read here. Ooh, I have to get it on my tablet. Hang on, or I might hang on just a sec. Shows how unprepared I am. When you look at what the scriptures say about the destruction of Babylon. Actually, what I'll do is first of all I'll read some of the Bible, what the Bible says about it. I'm in Jeremiah chapter 51, and I think the previous chapters are all about it as well, but I think it's all kind of samey, pretty samey. So I'll just go to chapter 51 of Jeremiah and read some of what it says that Jehovah says. This is what Jehovah says. So verse 2, I will send winnowers to Babylon, and they will winnow her and make her land empty. Verse 6, and I guess this is instructions to the Jews that were captive in Babylon. Flee out of the midst of Babylon and escape for your life. Do not perish because of her error, for it is the time for Jehovah's vengeance. He is paying her back for what she has done. So it sounds like some urgency there, like run for your life. Okay, verse 8. Suddenly Babylon has fallen and is broken. Verse 11. Jehovah has stirred up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, because he intends to bring Babylon to ruin. Okay, verse... Yeah, that is my washing machine in the background taking off. I hope it doesn't take off. It might move a few feet across the floor, but yeah. Verse 17. Every metal worker will be put to shame because of the carved image, for his metal image is a falsehood. Verse 18. When their day of reckoning comes, they will perish. Verse 24, I will repay Babylon and all the inhabitants of Chaldea for all the evil that they have committed in Zion before your eyes, declares Jehovah. Verse 25, I will stretch out my hand against you and roll you down from the crags and make you a burned out mountain. 26, because you will become desolate forever, declares Jehovah. And verse 29, I've got a few here. For the thoughts of Jehovah against Babylon will be carried out to make the land of Babylon an object of horror without an inhabitant. Verse 35, and let my blood come upon the inhabitants of Chaldea, says Jerusalem. Okay, right. I will dry up her sea and make her wells dry, and Babylon will become piles of stones, a lair of jackals, an object of horror and something to whistle at without an inhabitant. 43. Her cities have become an object of horror, a waterless land and a desert, a land where no one will live and where no man will pass through. 45. Get out of her midst, my people. Escape for your lives from the burning anger of Jehovah. 52. Therefore, look, the days are coming, declares Jehovah, when I will turn my attention to her graven images, and throughout all her land the wounded will groan. 55. For Jehovah is destroying Babylon. 55. 56. For the destroyer will come upon Babylon. 58. The wall of Babylon, though broad, will be completely demolished, and her gates, though high, will be set on fire. The people will toil for nothing. The nations will weary themselves just to feed the fire. So that's all I'm going to read. But you get the idea. You know, it really makes it sound like Babylon would be taken by the Medo-Persians and be destroyed. But that didn't happen. In fact, I will read some of the stuff that I found online, because there is controversy. A lot of people, Christians who do study the Bible and believe it's God's word, they say that those prophecies in Isaiah and Jeremiah actually refer to the future. And they tie it in with Revelation, talking about Babylon the Great, and they say that because they realise that those prophecies were not fulfilled upon the ancient city of Babylon. So they say, therefore, it must be in the future. But there are many reasons. Oh, I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, hang on, I'll see if I can find this. It's getting dark, isn't it? I'll see if I can find this stuff that I found online, which I found interesting. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, don't tell me my tablets. I have problems with my tablet, and when did I get it? I've had it a few years, but I hadn't had it that long, and it developed this problem where it would just turn off, and especially, you know, I found that if I did plug it in, had it in, plugged into power all the time, I'm just waiting for it to come back on. If I had it on plugged into power all the time, it wouldn't happen, but it's starting to happen now, so I think it's carking out or something. I have a few issues with it. But yeah, I found this website, and it was discussing prophecies and discussing Babylon, and it had made some really, really good points. So let's see if I can get it to come up. Waiting. I could go and hang my washing out, couldn't I? Because I can hear the machine beeping. Except that it's raining today, and it's probably just going to go in the dryer. Waiting. You can just, you know, sit there and absorb what I've been talking about. Oh, come on, you silly thing. You're so slow. Right. Please behave. Okay. Let's try this again. And I'll be able to tell you what this now this information comes from a website called I don't know how you say this, dabar.org, dabar.org, and it's an article called "The Fall of Babylon, a Problem in Prophetic Interpretation." So I will just read. I'll just read it. I have it's just a few pages, but you know, short pages, screenshots. In comparison with their treatment of other foreign nations, Isaiah and Jeremiah had a great deal to say about the fall of Babylon. As regards the fulfillment of these prophecies, two schools of thought have arisen. One view is that ancient Babylon will be restored, become once again the centre of sin, and then be destroyed finally by an eschatological, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, eschatological judgments. This view might be called the futuristic view. Another view is that Babylon was destroyed once and for all and will never be restored. This might be designated as the historical view. The purpose of this article is to answer this question. Is the fall of Babylon as prophesied by Isaiah and Jeremiah an historical event of the past, or does it await a future fulfillment? There are far-reaching involvements in the resolution of the question. Looks like anyway, I think I just missed out one line. Anyway, the next subheading was the argument from history. A second line of argument used to support the future. Or maybe I've missed out. Where's the first line? Or maybe I wasn't going to read you that anyway. Sorry. Okay. A second line of argument used to support the futuristic view of Babylon's fall is the argument from history. It is affirmed that the record of history and the prediction of Scripture are at variance with one another if the fall of Babylon is an event of the past. Scriptural prophecy is alleged to contradict the historical record on at least 2 points. 1, the suddenness of Babylon's fall, and 2, the catastrophic nature of Babylon's fall. Okay, now talking about the suddenness of Babylon's fall, because, you know, it does sound very sudden and very complete and thorough destruction, doesn't it, when you read the verses in the Bible. The futuristic interpreters argue that the scriptures indicate a sudden destruction of Babylon, whereas history records no such sudden destruction by which that city became a desolation. Isaiah 47, for example, indicates that the mistress of kingdoms would suffer loss of children and widowhood in one day. Both the loss of commercial relationships with other nations and depopulation would come upon Babylon suddenly and completely in their full measure. But the continuous history of Babylon can be traced through many centuries subsequent to the capture of that city by Cyrus. This fact seems to contradict the prophetic picture of Babylon's fall as given by Isaiah 47. Furthermore, Babylon will be destroyed, according to the scriptures, as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. The destruction of these cities was not protracted through many centuries, as with, you know, the city of Babylon, because the actual ancient city Babylon didn't become a desolate waste, or it didn't even become a completely desolate waste, because there are inhabitants, but for hundreds and hundreds of years, I think up to the 4th century CE. Anyway, so the destruction of these cities, that's Sodom and Gomorrah, was not protracted through many centuries, but was the result of a supernatural stroke. So Babylon's destruction is to be brought about suddenly, and the weapons of judgment are to be largely elemental. The heavens and earth will become disordered, and water will swallow up the site upon which the city stands. And it quotes Isaiah 13:13 and Jeremiah 51:42. Because Babylon did not suddenly become a desolation, the futuristic interpreters argue that the prophecies concerning the fall of this city must await fulfillment in the future. Then they look here at the catastrophic nature of Babylon's fall. Did it happen? The catastrophic nature of Babylon's fall is indicated in the following verses. And it quotes Isaiah 13:15 and 16. Everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is taken shall fall by the sword. Their infants also shall be dashed in pieces before their eyes. Their houses shall be rifled, and their wives ravished. The language of these 2 verses is the most descriptive that could be employed to picture the total, pitiless, and barbaric slaughter of the inhabitants of Babylon. The argument is advanced that nowhere in the history of Babylon's downfall did a destruction of human life occur in a degree comparable to that which is pictured by these verses. A second passage indicates the catastrophic nature of the destruction of the city itself. In Jeremiah 50:26, it says, "Come against her from the utmost border, open her storehouses, cast her up as heaps, and destroy her utterly, let nothing of her be left." This verse probably means that all the property found in Babylon would be collected and then burnt within the city, but such a catastrophic destruction has not been literally fulfilled by any of Babylon's conquerors. From the futuristic viewpoint, the prophecies of a sudden and yet complete destruction and desolation of Babylon have not been fulfilled. History reveals that Babylon never was the object of such a judgment, but on the contrary has persisted as a commercial centre and political community even to the present. In view of this argument from history, Newell concludes, it appears impossible that the great prophecies concerning Babylon's final overthrow have been finally fulfilled. Next heading is the argument from the present. The third line of evidence advanced to support the futurity of Babylon's fall is the argument from the present. It is affirmed that many passages which refer to Babylon's desolation present a picture which seems to contradict the existing condition of the city. The following excerpts from the Babylon prophecies make clear what the existing state of Babylon should be if the prophecies have been fulfilled. And it quotes here Isaiah 13:20 and Jeremiah 50 verse 3 and 51 verse 26. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their flocks to lie down there. For out of the north cometh a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They are fled, they are gone, both man and beast, and they shall not take of thee a stone for foundations, but thou shalt be desolate for ever, saith the Lord. The futuristic interpreters do not feel that the present condition of the site of ancient Babylon corresponds to this prophetic picture of desolation. To be sure, Babylon has experienced widespread ruin and damage, and these interpreters do not wish to undervalue or hide the extent of the ruin, but thus far only premonitory blows have fallen against Babylon. Seiss, is a person's name, maintains that Babylon, in all the deep calamities and desolations which have come upon her, never yet experienced all that has but thus been prophesied. In contradiction to the prophecies of the perpetual desolation of Babylon, flourishing villages exist today on the site of that metropolis. One city of more than 10,000 population probably lies within the walls of the ancient city. Oh, that was some lightning. Larkin argues that it has never been true that neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, nor can it be said that they shall not take of thee a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations. For many towns and cities have been built from the ruins of Babylon. Whoa, thunder. Woo. Oh, that's a good one. It's rattling my doors. Hilar was entirely constructed from debris of the city. I can feel it getting colder. Hilar was entirely constructed from debris of the city, and even in the houses of Baghdad, Babylonian stamped brick may be frequently noticed. Newton emphasises the fact that the land of Babylon has never yet experienced the desolation predicted, and he cites numerous travellers who attest to the fertility of the land of Babylon. Okay. I'll just read the last paragraph that I've got here. The futuristic interpreters feel that the prophecies concerning the destruction of Babylon have not yet passed into history. This being the case, they argue, three alternatives are left to the interpreter. 1. He can deny the inspiration of the prophets themselves. 2. He can boldly deny the facts and argue against realities. 3. He can speak the truth and say that Babylon has not yet received its final blow. So basically, what that's all amounting to is that the prophecies regarding the fall and destruction of Babylon did not come true. It's as simple as that, really. And of course, those who are firmly convinced in the infallibility, if you like, of God's word, that it's from him, of course they have to look for some other way to understand those prophecies. So they say, well, they just haven't happened yet. Kind of like what Russell and, just hasn't happened yet. It will happen. Anyway, the storm is second thunderstorm today. Exciting. What a treat. Anyway, yeah. I hope you managed to get through to the end. Sorry about all that reading at the end, but it was a lot better than how I could say it. And yeah, go and do a little digging and a little research into it yourself. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Okay, bye for now.